Welcome back to Basic Mathematics. In this video, we're going to talk about how to talk about percents. The language of percents and percent problems and percent problem solving is, as I said in previous video, fairly similar to the language of fraction notation, but it has its own quirks and its own idiosyncrasies. So let's dive in and take a look at how that's supposed to work. The language of percents is really centered around the word of as a meaning of multiplication. Right? Half of 12 literally translates to 1/2 times 12, which is 6. Or a third of 18 is 1/3 times 18, which is, again, 6. I happen to really like 6 today. That's the language we are going to be using when we talk about percents. Right? 25% of 24. Right? That's literally 25% times 24. And one key of working with percents is that even though a percent looks like a number, it is not a number. So, because percents are not numbers, we don't have a number here to multiply. We need to translate 25% into a number. The natural inclination, the easier way to do that, is to write 25% as a decimal and multiply 0.25 times 24. And while that certainly works, if you recognize that 25% is the fraction 1/4, well, that's a lot easier. 1/4 times 24 is 24 divided by 4, which is 6. 0.25 times 24 you have to go through a whole bunch of writing before you realize that that is also 6. I really like 6 today. In many situations, writing out the percent as a decimal value is going to be easier, especially when you're dealing with some really ugly looking numbers and you are going to want to grab a calculator to solve it. In this course, we are very specifically looking at problems where we can avoid calculators whenever possible. As I mentioned in an earlier video talking about ratios and proportions, unfortunately, some of the homework problems outside of my control do ask you to look at numbers that are not so nice to look at pencil and paper. Unfortunately, my math lab has a random number generator that's not as easy to control as the one in D2L. So assignments in D2L tend to avoid that issue. Assignments in my math lab, you may find sometimes you have to grab a calculator. I promise you that on exams, there are not going to be any problems where you are going to want to use or where you're going to need to use a calculator to solve them, which is important because you are not permitted to use a calculator on exams in this course. Let's take a look at a couple of more of these just to make sure that it makes sense. right? 10% of 42. Once again, you can either think of this 10% as the decimal 0.10 or as the fraction. Either way, it will give you the same value. And I am going to want to write out my results as decimal values most of the time when I'm talking about percents. So either way you look at that, you do end up with 4.2. Right. 33% of 60. This is one that's more of a challenge than you would think. 33% is really close to 1/3 of 60, which is 20. But it's not quite, right? 1/3 is 33.3 repeating percent, not 33%. So that's a trap that's really easy to fall into. Unfortunately, for something like 33% of 60, we do have to write that out as the decimal, 0.33 times 60. Six times 3 is 18. And we get that the actual value of 33% of 60 is 19.8, not 20. All right. With that, I am going to wrap up our discussion on percents for now. Take a look at the practice problems related to that. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.